What's up, everybody? Chris Pinnell here, breaking down the waiver wire for Week 8 of the fantasy football season. If you do enjoy today's video, even if you don't, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about your own personal teams and you want to ask me, leave them down below. I'd be more than happy to get back to you. All right, so let's get into it here, and we're going to go position by position and just a couple of guys from each team. I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I like to be nice and organized. So we will start with the quarterback position. And the number one pickup for me right now is going to be Kyler Murray, who's basically a coin flip if he's going to be owned in your league or not. 48% owned in sleeper leagues as of right now. Now, he's not going to be back for this Week 8 matchup versus the Baltimore Ravens, and even then, that's a pretty tough matchup. And then Week 9, they get the Cleveland Browns. Another not so great matchup, and he's not 100% expected to return for Week 9. It's possible, but it says the most likely return is going to be Week 10 versus the Atlanta Falcons. And I wouldn't say that's an amazing matchup either, but if you were someone like me that has been dealing with Deshaun Watson, I play in 2 leagues every year just so I'm not completely scattered around, then I do DFS for the rest. And I have Deshaun Watson in both of my leagues. Now, I will tell you right now, it has not been a fun experience. The backups I keep picking up and streaming every week, I haven't gotten more than 7 points in over a month, just absolute terrible luck. And then I started him last week, and obviously we all know how that went. So if you are a complete quarterback hell like me, grabbing Kyler Murray before the hype train actually starts, because right now, obviously on Sleeper, he's not going to have a projection for this week. So I would pick him up now before the price goes up. And there's some better matchups ahead. So week 11, we get Houston, which is a fine spot. Week 12, we get the Rams. Week 13, we get Pittsburgh. And while Kyler Murray is not really that great of a real life quarterback, I don't care about that. For fantasy purposes, because he runs the ball, is always going to put him in play. Now, still overall, looking at his 2022 game log, we saw 26 points, 19, 29, 17, 18, 17, 23, 16, 26, and 20. That is consistency that I would love if I have a low-end QB1 or have to stream a quarterback every single week, or if you're like me and have Deshaun Watson. So I would stash Kyler Murray right now if he's available and then play him in a few weeks, and hopefully you can get a consistent high-end QB2 or a low-end QB1. The next quarterback, Gardner Minshew, Minshew Mania, Minshew Magic, almost put off the dub versus Cleveland's ferocious defense in a really exciting game, 39-38. Probably get robbed by the rest of my Browns fans, so you're not going to hear it from me. But he is only owned in 13% of leagues right now. And while I would hope that you don't have to start Gardner Minshew, and there is no bye weeks this week for Week 8 of the NFL season, so this is maybe something potentially in the future. But if you know you're in trouble for Week 9 or Week 10, he does have matchups versus Carolina and New England. Especially that matchup versus Carolina, that would definitely be a decent streaming option. And this Browns defense was no joke. He did put up 31 points versus them, over 300 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and also had 2 rushing touchdowns. And while you can't count on 2 rushing touchdowns, still 302 against the Browns defense was obviously very impressive. So if you really need a streamer and the quarterback position is depleted in your league or you're in a deep league, Minshew is fine for the next few weeks before his bye week, especially in that Week 9 matchup versus Carolina. Moving on to the running backs, the number one pickup for me has to be Darrell Henderson of the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I know we just went over this last week where everyone was picking up the Rams running back, which was Zach Evans. They're blowing their load on their fab there. And if you got him, you were probably pretty happy at first. But then reports started coming out where, hey, maybe Zach Evans isn't the guy. That Royce Freeman's the better pass blocker. He's going to see some snaps. Then we saw Darrell Henderson get activated. And I was like, well, this guy definitely knows the system. And I feel like Sean McVay might just end up giving him a good amount of work because he just knows what to do already. And that ended up really being the case. He played 57% of the snaps. Royce Freeman played 43% of the snaps. And Zach Evans did not touch the field. So if you blew your load on Zach Evans last week, well, I'm sorry. But definitely not looking like it's the play right now. But you can cleanse yourself and hopefully go back out there and get Darrell Henderson or even Royce Freeman. I'm fine. He should be a little bit cheaper, and he did still see a good amount of work. This is not going to be a situation where we saw with Kyren Williams where he's playing every single snap out there. But we know the Rams backfield, that position, and that offense has been valuable for years now with Sean McVay. So I want the starting running back there, and Darrell Henderson is definitely looking like it. He's available in 62% of leagues still, and by the time Wednesday morning hits this time, it's probably going to be well above 70%. Another running back that I think is a pretty strong ad this week, and it's actually someone that's going to be a post-hype play here because he was a popular pickup after Week 5 versus Cincinnati, where he saw 77% of the snaps and had a decent amount of opportunity with James Conner going down. But it's Amari Demercado. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Demercado. I apologize if not. But he's a rookie coming out of TCU here. And he looks like he came back to life. So when everyone picked him up and we saw Keontae Ingram come back. We kind of assumed he would still be the starter, at least still see a decent amount of work. Well, he wasn't that on the depth chart after we all picked him up on waivers. Go figure, a lot of times it just doesn't work out how we expected to. Played 43% of the snaps, but only saw 2 carries and 1 target. But then head to last week versus Seattle Seahawks in week 7. He plays 80% of the snaps, 13 carries on 60 yards, 4.5 yards per carry. And we also get 5 targets, which is what I love to see, because I'm assuming most of you play in some style of PPR format, whether it be full point or half point. Either way, you're going to take those points because it does give you a nice added floor. But if he's going to be the main back here, Ingram did not play a snap last week. So if we're going to get a bona fide RB1, not saying it's a great offense or an amazing situation, but if you can get 15 plus opportunities, I know a lot of you are probably hurting for a running back out there, so pick him up, whether it's for a bench piece or just a flex play this week. And he's widely available in around 80% of leagues right now, 19% rostered over on Sleeper. Now, the matchups, like we talked about with Kyler Murray, it's not too great. Baltimore, Cleveland, Atlanta gets a little bit softer down there with Houston, Los Angeles, and Pittsburgh, but we can't pass up the touches. And lastly, we have Chuba Hubbard here, who's only available in roughly 40% of leagues right now. So this is just a reminder, if he is out there, you have the potential to get a just starting running back for the rest of the season on waivers. Now, I'm not saying I'm excited about the Panthers offense. They're a dumpster fire, and it's just one of the worst teams in the league right now. And Miles Sanders, yes, he does exist. But when he was out in week 6, Chuba Hubbard took advantage of his new role. 19 carries, 1 target, so 20 total opportunities. I wish we saw more targets, especially with them trailing. Wouldn't have minded some dump-offs. But he took care of business, over 4.5 yards per carry, got into the end zone, played 80% of the snaps. And it's not like he has not been playing at all this year. He's been kind of floating around 30, 40% of the snaps. We saw him play over 50% of the snaps in week 4 versus Minnesota and 50% versus Detroit. And it's not like Miles Sanders has exactly been great this year. So I would not be surprised if at some point here or just now going forward that Chuba Hubbard just ends up being the RB1 in this offense. Now, it's not an exciting offense, but they are going to use the running back position, and we have some really good matchups to take advantage of for a really decent stretch here. So week 8, we have Houston. Week 9, we have Indy. Week 10, we have Chicago. It's a little bit tough after that as we have Dallas, Tennessee, Tampa Bay. But for the next few weeks, Chuba Hubbard, I mean, he could definitely be a really nice spot start, especially if Miles Sanders happen to miss any more time. And moving on to wide receiver, the number 1 option for me this week is going to be Josh Downs, who's currently available in just about half of sleeper leagues right now, only rostered 52%, which I'm assuming is going to go up this week for week 8. But Josh Downs has honestly been pretty good, especially the last month now. Week 7 versus Cleveland, which was a very difficult matchup. They've allowed the fewest points per game to the wide receiver position this season at 26.5 last week. 6 targets, 5 catches, 125 yards, and got into the end zone. You can make that 2 weeks in a row. He has found the end zone as he did score last week versus Jacksonville. Not an amazing matchup this week versus New Orleans, but most of the attention will go to Michael Pittman as he is still the number 1 in this offense. But great matchup versus Carolina, which is what I am really excited about for week 9. But on the season, 19% target share for Josh Downs, 20% market share of the team's air yards, a 43% weighted opportunity share. It's too good of an opportunity for me to pass up for a pretty talented wide receiver. And second here, he's not available in too many leagues, but if he is out there, I'd highly recommend getting him because he has only been rising in my rankings just week in, week out from what I've seen from Rashee Rice, the rookie of the Kansas City Chiefs. And he played the most snaps he has played in this game this season. Last week versus the Chargers, 59% of the time. 6 targets, 5 catches, 60 yards, and got into the end zone for his 3rd touchdown of the season. Now, the targets are completely just absolutely wild in this offense for the wide receiver position, just distributed everywhere. He's only receiving a 13% target share on the season. Has an 8 out of 5.6, which is not amazing. Only a 10% market share of the team's air yards. Keep in mind, Travis Kelce is the guy that you can just count on every single week from this offense. But if we're going to have a wide receiver emerge from this offense, I think Rashee Rice is definitely the guy that we'd expect because the wide receiver position here is just absolute chaos. Sky Moore sucks. Darius Toney, he's got talent, but he can't stay on the field and he just makes too many mistakes and the snaps are just very sporadic each week. And it's not really something you can count on too much. MVS runs a lot of routes, but he's pretty much just a wind sprinter out there. Doesn't do anything with them. Justin Watson did miss last week, which it could also lead to why Rice played a little bit more snaps this week, but still, I would definitely say Rice is a more talented receiver than Justin Watson. Then you have Justin Ross, who got arrested like yesterday, so not really sure we have to worry about him too much. So I think if we're going to have a guy emerge, Rashee Rice is the guy. And look, I don't care who you are. If you were getting looks from Patrick Mahomes, those are the most valuable targets you can ask for in the NFL. I will take it all day. And next up, we have a New England Patriot, which I know, boring, gross, ugly, bad team. But Kendrick Bourne has honestly not been terrible. He's currently wide receiver 24 on the season. Now, keep in mind, some guys have had some bye weeks, and he has not yet. But there has been some weeks where Kendrick Bourne has definitely been in play. Week 1 versus Philly, 11 targets, 6 catches, got 2 touchdowns in the game, good for 24 fantasy points. And a bit of a rough stretch where he wasn't really producing too much, but the targets have been there, 9-5, 3-5. But the past 2 weeks, has gotten back on track, 11 targets versus Las Vegas, 10 catches for 89 yards. The last week versus Buffalo, 7 targets, 6 catches for 63 yards. This is not a team that I expect to be winning many games, or at least having an established lead where they grind the clock out too much. So assuming they have to throw the ball quite a bit, which they should versus Miami, I think this is a great spot for Kendrick Bourne, because you have to imagine Miami is going to be leading in this game, and the Patriots will have to be throwing. Washington's a bit of a toss-up. That's a really easy matchup. Then Indianapolis in week 10. Game is a bit of a toss-up again, but really easy pass defense there. So this is a really good-looking stretch for 3 weeks for Kendrick Bourne for the bye week. Then after that, really good matchups once again. The Giants, we know how bad their defense is. The Chargers are getting smoked through the air. They just gave up a ton of yards to Patrick Mahomes. Not saying Mac Jones, the Patriots offense, is the Chiefs or Patrick Mahomes, but it has been a common theme so far for that Chargers defense this season. Then you have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kansas City, we know they'll be trailing. Denver again. So the list just goes on, but where we have really good spots for this Patriots offense. Not saying they're going to excel too much, but Kendrick Bourne's at least in a decent amount of spot and gets enough volume to where it's going to make him viable, because I'm pretty sure he's established himself at this point as the number 1 option on this team. And this last one is just a reminder, or maybe a heads up, to go check and see if Tank Dell was dropped after the bye week, because he did miss week 6, and then he was going to be out for week 7 as well with the bye. So some people might just cut him loose. And if he is out there, I would try to get him back. The rookie has definitely shown that he can make some explosive plays. I know Robert Woods is there. He's just kind of boring and old and more of a short route guy. Nico Collins is the alpha dog there, wide receiver 1 of that offense. And Noah Brown did return, which could eat into a little bit of his workload. But I would say Tank Dell is still probably the second best wide receiver there, right behind Nico Collins. Moving on to tight ends here, obviously not a glamorous position, but there is 2 guys that I think do stand out a bit. The number 1 clear option, I would say, is probably Dalton Kincaid for the Buffalo Bills, who looks like he is going to have a big opportunity in this offense. He's a rookie. They drafted him for a reason, and he should be able to show his upside. And in his return last week to the field in week 7 versus New England, 15 fantasy points, caught all 8 of his targets for 75 yards, not getting to the end zone. But that's what we like to see out of Dalton Kincaid. And the reason he's going to get this opportunity is because Dawson Knox is going to undergo wrist surgery. We're not sure when he's going to return. The timetable is currently unclear. But if he's going to miss a decent amount of time, and Dalton Kincaid's going to be the only tight end in this offense and play a large majority of the snaps, because even so, last week for Dawson Knox, played over 60% of the snaps. So if we give Dalton Kincaid the majority of that, obviously Quentin Morris is a thing, but you can't really imagine he's going to cut into it too much. I think there is a ton of upside for Kincaid, and he would be a weekly tight end 1. And then another guy that might have gotten dropped because of the bye week and 2 poor performances prior to that versus the Chargers, where he saw 1 target for 2 points, then versus San Francisco, where the Cowboys absolutely collapsed by 0.8 points. You have Jake Ferguson, who is running a ton of routes comparatively to all the tight ends this year. And he's going to be involved in the offense, plays a good chunk of snaps, played nearly 90% of the snaps versus the Chargers last week. Should be able to bounce back versus the Rams. So if he's out there and you were hurt at the tight end position, go pick him up, because this is a shallow position and he's at least going to see opportunity and a pretty decent offense. With that being said, guys, that's all I got for today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. I'll have my quarterback rankings out later today if you want to check that out. But I wish you all the best of luck this week in your waivers. I'll see you all next time.